Good morning, students. In the last class, we have learned that how testes and ovaries play their role in producing their respective germ cells. Testes produce sperm and ovaries produce egg cells. Testes produce sperms in millions of number daily, whereas ovaries produce only one egg in a month. Alternatively, by each ovary, one egg is released for every month. Okay. So, the released egg will reach the middle of the fallopian tube or oviduct, whereas after the sexual intercourse, the released sperm in the vaginal passage they travel upwards and through the birth canal uterus, finally they reach the fallopian tube. In the fallopian tube, if the egg is already present, only one of the sperm fuses with the egg cell. Remaining sperms simply they degenerate or fall away. The fusion of sperm with the egg cell is called fertilization of the egg. This fertilized egg is also called zygote. After few divisions, only very few number of divisions, a ball-like structure is formed from this zygote, which moves to the uterus, and in the thick lining of the uterine wall, this ball or the initial cellular mass that is formed from the zygote gets embedded. The embedding of zygote into the uterine wall is known as implantation. And from this zygote, after implantation, from this zygote slowly, further divisions result in the formation of embryo, and this embryo further develops into fetus, and this fetus will be delivered out as baby. Right? See, zygote, embryo, right? Fetus and delivered baby. These are the 4 stages. In the fallopian tube, the zygote stage is formed, right? In the uterus, first initially embryo is formed, later the fetus is going to be formed. And this fetus is coming out as baby. So, as long as inside the uterus or the mother's womb, you should not refer it as a baby. You have to refer it as what? Fetus. Before that, embryo. Right? And after it is delivered out, you need to refer it as baby. You should not call it as fetus. Right? Okay. The growing embryo, it is provided nutrition. Why it should be provided nutrition? Because for the growth of the embryo into fetus and for all the organ development, certain raw materials and energy is needed. All these raw materials and energy are provided to the growing embryo from mother's body only. But how do they provided? The growing embryo is provided nutrition from mother's blood through a special tissue, through a special disc-shaped tissue. This disc-shaped tissue that provides nutrition from mother's blood to the growing embryo is known as placenta. Placenta is a special disc-shaped tissue which is embedded in the wall of the uterus. This placenta is having 2 sides. One side is facing towards the embryo, another side is facing towards mother. On embryo's side, placenta is having many finger-like structures which are known as villi. like how finger-like projections in small intestine are known as villi. Here also on the placenta towards the embryo side, finger-like structures are there which are known as villi. On mother's side, placenta is having large blood spaces. On mother's side, placenta is having large blood spaces. These blood spaces surround the villi. These blood spaces surround the villi. And these villi provide large surface area to pass glucose and oxygen from mother to embryo. So, these villi, what do they just provide? Wherever the villi are there, you have to remember blindfoldly that they provide large surface area. Large surface area is there which is needed to pass glucose and oxygen from mother to embryo. The developing embryo, it produces many waste substances, like how in our body by the normal cellular metabolism waste materials are generated. In the same way, in the developing embryo also waste materials are generated. These waste materials have to be removed from the growing embryo, otherwise they will cause harm to the growing embryo. So these waste materials have to be removed. So they are removed from the embryo by transferring them into the mother's blood. Okay, by transferring them into mother's blood. Not directly they can be thrown out. First of all, the waste materials generated in the growing embryo are transferred to the mother's blood. And then through the mother's blood, okay, by normal excretion process of mother body, they are removed out. But how do these waste materials are transferred from growing embryo to mother's blood? How embryo was getting nutrition through placenta. Then waste materials are transferred from growing embryo to the mother's blood through placenta only, right? So like this, the development will go on. The development of a complete fetus, it takes place around 9 months, approximately 9 months in the mother's womb. Then childbirth takes place. After complete development is over, then childbirth takes place. This scientifically, the childbirth is known as parturition, right? The childbirth takes place by the rhythmic contractions of the muscles of the uterine wall. How the child has to come out, how the fetus has to come out. Something is there in a bag, if you push it, it will come out. So uterus is a elastic bag-like structure, I already have told you. So the rhythmic contractions in the muscles of the uterine wall, they cause, okay, the fetus to come out. They cause the fetus to come out. They cause the child, okay, they cause the child to take its birth, right? So there is a special hormone called oxytocin which is produced in pituitary gland. This oxytocin, upon complete development of fetus, the pituitary gland is given a stimulus that it has to produce oxytocin. The oxytocin that is produced by the pituitary gland is moving towards, it will move to the uterus and through the bloodstream. And this oxytocin, it causes the uterine contractions to take place, or it stimulates, oxytocin stimulates the muscular contractions of uterine wall. These muscular contractions of the uterine wall push the baby out. Then parturition or childbirth takes place. So all these events occur provided if the egg is fertilized. Provided if the egg is fertilized. What will happen if the egg is not fertilized? That we have to learn now. What will it happen if egg is not fertilized? See, the released egg from the ovaries, it lives, means it will be alive for about only 1 day. So if the egg is not fertilized, after this 1 day, that egg gets degenerated. But in the expectation of receiving the fertilized egg, that is zygote. The uterine wall has become fully prepared with rich amount of blood and nutrients, okay, and it has become thick and spongy, which is essential to nourish the growing embryo. For example, if a new guest is going to come to our house, okay, and he is something special, what will we do? We prepare so many things, so many items, but unfortunately, if that guest, okay, is not going to come after all our arrangements, and we cannot preserve those arrangements, and if we preserve those arrangements within the house, our house may get spoiled. Then what will we do? We throw it out. Same thing it happens in the case of uterine wall. The uterine wall has already prepared with rich amount of blood and nutrients, and it has become thick and spongy. If the fertilized egg has not come, has not arrived, it didn't get embedded, then what will happen? Okay, as egg is not fertilized, the thick lining is not needed for this uterine wall, and it cannot be preserved for a long time because it can cause potential infections to occur. It can cause potential infections to occur and damage the uterus, right? As egg is not fertilized, the thick lining is no more needed, and it cannot be preserved also for longer periods, for the next month or subsequent months. So if it is preserved, what will happen? It can cause potential infections because the nutrients can be utilized by the infectious microbes, and they can cause the uterus to get spoiled and to get damaged also. So if the egg is not fertilized, the thick and spongy lining of uterine wall, it gets broken slowly. Not all of a sudden, slowly it starts and comes out gradually through the vagina as blood and mucus. So if the egg is not fertilized, what will happen? The thick and spongy lining of uterine wall gets broken down slowly and comes out gradually through the vagina as blood and mucus. One egg is released every month. So if it is not fertilized, one cycle of release of blood and mucosa through the vagina takes place once in a month. So every month only one egg is released. In the expectation of to receive that fertilized egg, what will happen? Uterine wall has prepared. Okay. So if the egg is not fertilized and fertilized egg has not arrived to the uterine wall, one cycle of release of blood and mucosa through the vagina takes place once in a month. This cycle of release of blood and mucosa through the vagina once in a month is known as menstruation. Of course, the first time when the egg is released, obviously, it is not going to get fertilized, okay, and the menstruation takes place. The first menstruation is known as menarche, okay, and in the women, that egg release, it does not take place throughout the life. It will take place from the puberty up to a particular age, like about 48 or 50 years of the women's age, after which the egg release is stopped. When the egg release is stopped, the menstruation is also going to get completely stopped, right? And what will happen when the menstruation stops, right? It is stop, that is pause, that is menopause. First menstruation is menarche, arch, first one, old, first basic one, like archaeology, first basic, okay, menarche, arch, okay, that one. Right? Menopause, menstruation is stopped. And whatever it may be, the cycle of release of blood and mucosa through the vagina once in a month is known as menstruation. And menstruation usually lasts means it just prolongs for about a period of 2 to 8 days with respect to the women's age and health status. In some women, it will be prolonging for a longer period, like around some 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. In some women, it is very less in time, like 2 to 3 days. Within 4 days itself, it will be getting completed. So whatever it may be, an average menstrual cycle lasts about 2 to 8 days. Okay, and how the reproductive health has to be maintained by the individuals. What is reproductive health? All these things let us learn in the next class.